Great. Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining in busy times. I think the awareness of my case might be quite prevalent. The incident less so, the case quite a bit, the impact of it and references to it. But what I'm going to do is kind of take you back a little bit, have a brief introduction of how I got to what I'm doing now. Likely, if you registered, you've each read the brief description of I'm trying to get into detailing what I do as a recovery coach, mentor, and case project manager for injured and traumatized aid workers. This is very much driven from where I came from. And I think, yeah, it's a good conversation because I think a lot of people support peers. A lot of us have colleagues or even ourselves that might be in a stage or in a cloud of concerns and injury and not know the way forward. And I hope to bring some value to that landscape and help guide people through it. So I'm going to take you back a bit. I'm going to talk about these three roles that I consider are pretty important for what I do, a bit about what that work looks like, and then definitely going forward, what's the advocacy to try to reduce that the need for the role that I find myself in now. Um, Definitely, as sort of a housekeeping, all topics are quite open for me. I went through a traumatic incident. However, I must talk highly about my psychologist. Yeah, very much. I've done a lot of work and got a lot of success through coping with the incident and able to talk about it. I find that learning is deeper when we can talk about everything. So yeah, all topics are quite open here. So yeah, that's from my side. If you've got private questions, definitely the second half of this talk where that's not recorded, it's all welcome. As well, you can contact me and yeah, we can set a time to have a chat. So yeah, and by the way, questions are welcome as well. It's quite a small group, so open format is workable. So I guess taking you back, just my pre-incident life, for the 10 years before I was attacked and kidnapped, I was an aid worker. I worked in Somalia and Chad and South Sudan, places like that. A lot of it with MSF. So yeah, out there in higher risk places. And I guess this contract that I had in Dadaab with the organization I was with, um, it was unsettling in the nine or sorry the 10 months before my incident. There was a lot of reckless behaviors going on there. A lot of drivers driving fast, a lot of people not using seatbelts. When insecurity started getting bigger in the camps, a lot of feelings of like, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. There's nothing we can do to prevent things. There was a fatality. One of the cars hit and killed somebody, but this was after many of the cars had gone quite fast and hit people and put them in the hospital or rolled over. One car rolled over. It was driving too fast. A goat came out of nowhere, type of things. Yeah, flagging this stuff was just going blindly or deafly to the management. Well, there's nothing we can do. This is Africa, kind of stuff, which I'd never seen so much in my 10-year career before that. Um, Anyways, leading up to my incident, yeah, there was a high profile visit coming in. Security people were involved a little bit and then put aside, and the decision makers just went forward and made decisions without on security without security advice. Anyways, we got attacked. Myself and four others got shot, one fatally. We got kidnapped for 4 days. We got out of that. through a rescue. There was a militia in the area. The crisis team asked them to pursue us and, if possible, make a rescue. I'm grateful that we got out at that time, though it was highly risky, and we got out. Afterwards, yeah, it was quite traumatic. Just the shift of disbelief that you got taken and kidnapped, turning to belief that you're in that situation, and your decision making adapting to that. Then on a rescue, the disbelief that you're actually rescued, and the trying to adapt to that. There's a number of other challenges of shifting from disbelief to belief, and then from belief to understanding the new landscape and being functional in it. Early on, I was fortunate that a lot of my career beforehand had talked about mental health, had talked about psychological injuries. So I was maybe better suited to seek out a psychologist and a good trauma specific psychologist who could assist me understanding the landscape and understanding what was going on with me. He had asked me at the beginning what I was there for, what could he help me with, and I said, well, just like when I live in a malaria zone, I like to understand what my risks are, what I should look out for, and should any of these things become a problem, then what does treatment look like? Yeah, I think I was involved in a traumatic thing. So, and I'm not sleeping well. I'm really sensitive to anything around me. There's a lot of things that are different. So I want to understand that and help out or get help. He congratulated me that usually takes 2 months of somebody getting to that point. And anyways, we worked a lot, but I was lost. I was unable to walk around in my hometown in Toronto, in the streets where I'd grown up and gone to university, and they were very familiar places. But the hypersensitivity, hypervigilance, the thinking that anything could be a threat, the sort of behind the scenes amygdala freaking out at this person's opening their jacket. They must be trying to pull out a gun. I have to get out of here. Or being stuck in traffic and somebody wanting to wash my windows and slaps the windscreen with a squeegee, and that noise, it sounded like gunshots through a Land Cruiser type of thing. So I was struggling a lot with that. I was given a month off by the organization of paid leave. And then after that, it became conversations. It became paperwork and insurance thing. The insurance saying, okay, thank you for your documents. Just send in the right documents, send in updated proper documents, and we'll go ahead and look for things. So I would get other reports from my psychologist, as well as I'd been shot and my leg needed some assistance. So, okay, I've got this doctor and that doctor and these people saying his leg was likely fine before he was shot, and now it's not working well. Here's a letter, and there was just this game going on of yeah, keep sending us an updated version of the proper documents. They weren't really distinguishing between what my documents were and why they weren't sufficient. So I was sending a psychologist letters or multiple reports. At one point, we were able to force them into saying, what exactly is missing? And I said, well, as we said, we need a proper one. That's a psychologist. We need a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor. So we only take letters from psychiatrists. But it took maybe a year to get that little nuance. They were very unwilling to give that type of information of what the requirements were. I had a lot of concerns about my career. Would I be able to work again if I couldn't walk outside in Toronto? How could I work again in Somalia or South Sudan or somewhere that's much more complex than that? As well, I would say my cognitive functioning was lower. This in terms of being able to reply to an email or keep documents in order, even things like memory. I was noticing that, or actually, I wasn't noticing. It was my partner and friends noticing differences to my memory of things, and that was it was unfamiliar to me. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and there was again a shift of this disbelief. Wait a minute, PTSD, that happens to soldiers. I was just a aid worker. I was doing my job. I only got shot. I only got kidnapped. I only was around other people that were injured. But PTSD, there was a lot of disbelief, and that was quite difficult. Um, I guess in this process, I kept asking for support, and the door kept shutting. So I got a lawyer to help with that. And in fact, it sounds easy when I say it quickly like that, but the lawyer I finally ended up with was the 12th lawyer that I contacted, had conversations with. Maybe they got me ahead a step or two, but then there's a lack of jurisdiction, or maybe there was a conflict of interest, or maybe there was different blockages. They pointed to, you can get the maximum payout this way, and I said no, I want to go through a process of trying to help the organization learn. And I think maybe there's some learning on my side there, that um, the ratio of people that say your incident changed everything for us and we've learned, compared to people saying your court case changed everything for us and we learned, the ratio is hundreds to one, just in terms of um, I don't really recall anyone telling me your incident changed everything for us. So anyways, yeah, I got the lawyer, the door opened again, more conversations and figuring out some of those nuances of medical reports, what could be actually admissible to insurance, and what would the maximum insurance contributions be. But there was even things like my inability to work. The leading cause of that was my PTSD, not my physical injury, and therefore there was a 24-month cap to that. I could be permanently disabled, unable to work, but that would be it. Um, so anyways, my lawyer, was able to open the door to conversations. Then 4 times, there was a hard stop. This is it. We're finished with the conversation. So we submitted documents to the courts. The judge asked 3 times that we mediate. We said yes. We got a reply no 3 times, and then it went to court. Just before then, I had run out of money. It costs a lot to, like, even if you get the 12th lawyer who believes in the case, who says I will hide my hours and do things on, I had Wednesdays and Sunday nights from him, and I did a lot of the work myself. There's just hard costs related to going there. So I did a fundraiser on crowdfund, and yeah, I was able to get the funds needed to cover the court bills and other hard costs. Within a day of doing that, the organization said, okay, we have new information and we can mediate now. So we diverted our attention, mediation and the trial. The mediation is kind of protected. What we can talk about there, I can only talk about my feelings. I never felt so bullied and disappointed in my life. But yeah, then so it went to trial. There was no agreement in the mediation. And in the trial, I guess we got a few things: recognition of lack or shortages of insurance, shortages of support, and in closing arguments, they talked about, they admitted that there was negligence, not to the level of gross negligence, but there were shortcomings that constitute negligence. It was disappointing to go that far to get something, a recognition from them that was available through all the information that they had access to. It was only their investigations that proved things. there's no other investigation or any fact finding. Anyways, through that process, a lot of things got quite public. Um, being there's some news articles, the crowdfund definitely gained momentum. There's 337 people that contributed to that, and a lot of discussion about the concept of duty of care, reasonable measures for foreseeable risks, and that was the case. The judge found that they were grossly negligent, meaning the failure of the reasonable measures for foreseeable risks, and that was at all levels. On the ground that was there, the decision making of the country and regional office level, as well as in headquarters, that they knew of problems, they ignored them. They had all the tellings of failures, and they ignored it. So that verdict was there. And I guess after that verdict, people started contacting me, saying, "Hey, Steve, I heard about your case. You sued another organization. I want to sue someone. Can you help me?" Was I would say consistently the opening line to many emails or contacts. I started talking with people about, well, what are you really looking for? And they said, well, I don't know. But they're not paying my psychotherapy, and I'd like them to. And we started moving conversations into, well, let's start with a letter. Let's not pull out the sledgehammer when maybe a dialogue can be the issue. So yeah, definitely. I started hearing from people that reached out to me, and it started fitting three kind of categories of help identifying what they need. Some people who are injured, they don't know what they need. I like the analogy of a fog where they don't know where to even take the next step. They're lost. So helping people clear some of that fog and eventually start setting objectives. So with that, I tried to find the right job description for who helps somebody do that, and recovery coach seems to be one that I can accept as that. Like a coach, definitely they're the captain of their process. If they say their objective is psychotherapy and yeah, and an apology, well, okay, let's work on those things for them. The second role in there, and I think again, I'm guided by people asking me for this type of thing is mentoring. Like, what does the road look like further up there? So definitely on that example of trying to get psychotherapy and an apology. Apologies are really hard to come by. If a top management has initially told somebody, we're very sorry that this happened, it wasn't right, and we're going to support you through your recovery. I don't see those people because they get the support and assistance they need. So I generally get people who fall through that. They don't get an apology. I don't think it's really that practical. Not too many people that aren't willing to give it by themselves don't really give it later on. And after 2 years of fighting with management or something, would you really trust the value of that? Would it be just a communications person who's contrived the right wording of, and the lawyers have picked through it, and it's the safest inhumane thing to say? Anyway, so the mentoring role, what's it like up that road? Now, I guess my trauma is very different than other people's traumas and incidents, but there's some similarities, I must say, of being lost in a fog, not knowing your way forward, and also maybe advice on legal routes, like going through 12 lawyers, and it was 3.5 years between the incident and going to court. That was a horrible process, probably harder than the kidnapping, I must say. um, yeah, so definitely trying to take my case and other cases that I've worked on to give some insights to somebody so that they're not in this foreign foreign waters where they're having a hard time navigating, but rather they can use other cases. And then thirdly, I would say the third role is a project manager. Um, as I mentioned, the cognitive functioning of people often goes down. And this is, I would say, maybe even worse than a lower functioning person that maintains their same level of functionality. I find I'm working with a lot of previously quite high functioning people that have their optimism that stays up high, but then they got beaten down by their incident. So there's a lower functioning there. And so in a lot of our meetings, we would maybe talk about, yes, they can take on this one task. They can assemble their expense report or their expenses for that they're going to ask in part of a claim, and they'll do that. Should be done by 2 days from now, and yeah, so I try to incorporate some language in there and possibly some safe language that, okay, well, try that for a couple of days, but if that doesn't work out, then maybe I can draft that email or take a look at those files and sort them, or I can draft the first letter and you can correct it. So that's another thing. The project management thing, I guess probably like everybody's experience of project management, it's setting goals, taking steps towards those goals, reevaluating those goals, and just keep moving forward to communicate with the team and so forth. So those are kind of the three roles that I have. Yeah, I see everyone's eyes, so I'm just going to continue. But if and a big smile from Tina. If there's any questions, do raise your hand, and I'm happy to go back, slow down, something like that. Um, so I guess of those three roles, maybe I can break down what my approach looks like, and really my typical client. And yeah, let me go back a bit. Since people started reaching out to me, I started doing things on the side. But then 3 years ago, I decided this is what I have to focus on. This is the thing that I should do, not the thing I do on the side of the thing I do. So people approach me. I've had 40 clients now. Some are ongoing, but some are at their level of closure. Um, so it's enough to start seeing trends and actually have a structured approach. So when I have an intake with somebody, I definitely give an introduction. I talk about my experience and how I got to this role. I actually summarize it a lot more. I notice I took more time in the description here, but I talk about the value of psychotherapy, just so that before I know anything about them, I want to dispel that myth that psychotherapy, medical therapy, physiotherapy, other therapies, it's health. Let's call that health. And I'll be asking hard questions about how is their orthopedic surgeon on their physical injury, and how's their psychotherapy on their psychological injury. Um, but going through the list of psychotherapy and medical needs, insurance needs, legal needs, like oftentimes, if you think of a sexual assault or a rape or something where a crime has been committed to somebody, and even a kidnap, for instance, or a forced detention event, a crime has happened towards somebody. Getting a lawyer to describe the extent of the crimes, and so that the person can understand it. And maybe it's in a jurisdiction where there can be no criminal act to support the person or to get justice that way, but just in terms of laying out the legal landscape, as well as if there is a question of negligence from the organization, having a legal opinion and support on that. Closure in terms of, was there an after action review of the incident? What types of yeah, what does closure look like and smell like, and what are the different elements of that? Often in that intake, it does not go as far as people having a itemized list. Definitely, when you think of people being in a fog, there's light fogs, there's heavy fogs. There's some fogs where getting through that day is the critical thing, and so I guess relying on some psychological first aid and ensuring that the person is safe and secure, types of things. Onward from then, yeah, I guess we start identifying our goals. The mentoring thing just gets sprinkled in there. Definitely, if there's something that I can build trust with the person, such that later, if I misspeak or if I make a mistake myself, that trust can bring us forward. I like to use this analogy, or sorry, it's not an analogy, it's a story. When I first got out of my kidnapping, we were brought to a hotel and stayed there for some days during debriefs and medical reviews and such. And the first morning afterwards, I went to the breakfast buffet and I just looked at all of the food and I realized, my goodness, like I'm out. I was starting to get this belief of my rescue, and looking at all that food, and I could drink as much water as I wanted and likely it would be clean. And I just started breaking out in tears. And a colleague came up to me and said, "Steve, why don't you go sit in the corner there? I'll fix you a plate and it'll be fine. Just go over there." And so I thanked her and I sat over there. And that was, I would say, a compassionate approach. It was appropriate for where I was and the situation. Anyways, fast forward to dinner time. There's a dinner buffet as well, and I walked up to the buffet, and I was in a completely different mindset or state of mind. I was saying, wow, the salad bar. Do you eat salad before you eat the mains? Like, this all looks great. Like, where to go in first and how not to load up my plate too much was on my mind. And I guess my colleague had seen me again pause before the buffet, and she compassionately put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Steve, just go sit in the corner and I'll serve you up a plate." And I kind of lashed out at her inappropriately, saying, "Look, I had a bad time. I didn't regress to childhood. I can figure out my own meal." And I guess it was inappropriate, but I guess the thing was, her approach was exactly the same. It was from a place of compassion, but I find that trust, if you can get a trustful relationship with the person you're trying to support, then it can bridge those things. When something happens, maybe it's no fault of anybody. I don't blame myself too much for that, though it was my doing. But anyways, building trust. There's a few questions or a few things that I like to ask in the mentoring side of things, to really encourage good psychotherapy. Not everybody is up for it. Not everybody sees value in it. Not everybody has had a positive experience in the past. So I do like to bring up examples of the value from tools, though I don't say this worked on my back pain before. If you've got back pain, it must be the same thing. So you should take this medication. I'm not prescribing things. I'm not a psychotherapist, but definitely bring up some of the concepts that might be worked at, or if there's things that after a couple of weeks after the incident are not going away, you can't blame jet lag anymore. You can't do this. You got to expand your team. Um, Getting onto the project management side of things, team is a big thing. Because I'm not a lawyer, psychotherapist, medical doctor, insurance navigator, communications person, I like to bring in these expertise as needed. I often yeah, I would say quite often a lawyer is involved to help lay out what the landscape is. Um, yeah, really what the landscape is for that person. If they feel a crime has been committed or it's been negligence or wrongful dismissal or discrimination or harassment, um, just getting what the test of that is, and then what the information that we have is to support that test. It's really helpful for people, and I think it really helps with somebody's closure to put a definitive answer to, was this negligence or was this just bad practice, but not beyond that reasonable threshold that should be there. Um, yeah. So yeah, building the teams. I do a lot of team management. So we have a team meeting. I do notes, action points. I follow up with people. It is like running a project. There with strong recognition that whatever the client who's been traumatized says, we'll take it with a grain of salt, and maybe with some softer gloves, we'll help them through some of the admin. Not that they've regressed back to childhood, but rather on a bad day, you don't want to get out of bed when all the clouds are in a dark day. And I mean that in like a depressive type of situation, and do stupid paperwork. And maybe they've had a dark day for many days, and this is the first good day. They get out of bed and they're feeling good about themselves, and they also don't want to do stupid paperwork. Yeah, I get that. If I can offer an extra hour to somebody's good day after some bad days by me doing stupid paperwork, I'll do it for sure. I hated my days of stupid paperwork. Yeah, I guess funding is always an issue. Yeah, psychotherapy, if there's a dispute with the organization, um, well, the person needs psychotherapy now, not after the dispute has been finished. So trying to negotiate with psychotherapists to postpone treatment fees or postpone payments, or invoicing, or yeah, postpone it, offer pro bono. Yeah, any way. I guess there's a lot of bespoke solutions. Um, yeah, a lot of lawyers are not so familiar with the humanitarian aid landscape. They're dealing with financial crimes or other things back home, and then they have to shake their heads around, get into Jordan or Gaza, Sudan, or anywhere like that, and what's going on there. So there's a lot of interpretation that so that the client isn't burdened with, no, this is what it was meant. When I said deployed, that's this, and this is what it is. Um, yeah, but anyways, back on the funding, like usually some of these professions, if they have a full-time other revenue stream, they can do some pro bono work. Sometimes aid worker support is their bread and butter, so they need payments, and getting payments can be difficult. Um, yeah, and then I guess the last part of the project management side of things is just the situations change. Sometimes legal discussions are like, here is a claim, let's talk it out. It doesn't have to go to court. We all agree the incident happened. We're just disagreeing on the final number that a settlement would come to, what information is needed. And maybe that process gets protracted many years. So at some point, maybe the person's idea of what closure looks like has changed. So changing our objectives and adjusting to that. So that's kind of the project management side. As far as diversity of cases out there, I do recognize that there's a lot of well-supported people. I like to use the analogy of this game called Snakes and Ladders, or Shoots and Ladders. If you haven't seen it, it's a board of 100 squares. It starts with number one. You go up the board to square number 100, and there's ladders between lower squares and upper squares, where if you roll the dice and you land on that square, you go up. And there's snakes where they bring you down. So if your objective is to get to square 100, and your journey is going along this board, randomly you can hit ladders that pop you up. Recently, a client had called me, and we got to the organization, and we were trying to find the right person to understand the case, and then ideally, since it happened a long time ago, just say, okay, well, we believe you, or like we found a report about the incident, or something to convince them to take on this case. We got to a person who said, I was in that country at that time. I remember that incident. It was more than a decade ago. I remember it. That was on our watch. That's our duty of care. We're going to be with you. That's a huge ladder that goes up. I've also been on calls where a person says, you know what, there was no reported incident there. And the person said, yeah, it was early in my career. I was afraid if I said something, then people would not hire me anymore. And well, okay, we can see that the incident happened, but we don't see that you were involved in it. So we're not going to pay for your psychotherapy for 12 sessions or something stupid and small like that. So that's a snake that deflates the person's, if you imagine motivation is like a balloon, something's inflated and deflated, and sometimes it pops. That brings them down. Um, so, anyways, yeah, I don't see the good cases. Going back to that analogy of the snakes and ladders, I interviewed somebody though. I found this person, bad case of detainment, 6 months detained, life threatening, and the person got out, and step by step there just seemed to be these ladders that were going, bringing this person ahead. Psychotherapy also involved life coaching, reintegration to work, insurance, paying the bills. I was asking, like, well, what about paying the bills? Like, you might have your psychotherapy covered, but what about the taxi to get there and the time off for that? Oh, yeah, like they pay for the taxi as well to get the psychotherapy. They said, we don't want you on buses. We think you should focus on your way there and focus on the way back. But what if you forgot a receipt? Oh, yeah, they weren't so bothered about receipts. I would just send them a note about the number, and then they would cover it. And wow, that's huge. Like, if you're going through a dark, foggy time and you're not good at keeping paperwork together on a good day, wow, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. So, anyways, I don't see those types of people. The diversity of clients, I would put lower competence just in terms of articulating their needs and taking steps to get there, and sometimes a higher level as well, where maybe it was less traumatic. Maybe they had more time to be able to put things in boxes. Maybe they had good support early on, and now that they've got through the early phases of survival and being able to contextualize their trauma, now they're able to work on what does the nuances of closure look like, and accountability, and some of those later phases of what closure could be. Um, yeah, as I said, I've worked with about 40 people, or sorry, I've worked with 40 people, some very short, some multi-years. Forced detentions somehow seems to be a filter that Steve was kidnapped and sued. People that are kidnapped or want to sue are drawn to me, but also sexual assaults and rapes and whistleblowing and harassments and yeah, so some things like that, and even protracted grievances that aren't on a injury or trauma thing, but just that accountability side. A lot of people like that their injury can lead to learning that prevents somebody else to be affected in a negative way. So it could just be a protracted grievance. Um, yeah, the last kind of things I said I would be really quicker, but that didn't happen. Yeah, sometimes organizations do hire me to support their people. That's the best. That's huge. And when it comes with we want to support them, but either we don't have the capacity or they just don't trust us, but we still want to support them. It's quite bold to hire me. I was the guy that successfully got over hurdles and was able to sue. But it's a vote of confidence and a real confidence builder to the client as well. Sometimes clients hire me, but usually they're unemployed and out of resources and at their end's wit when they come to me. So mostly, and right now I'm trailing around 88% of my work is pro bono. So yeah, that's or deferred, but I'd say the long defer. Lastly, the workshopping, being part of webinars like this, presentations, conferences. I saw Christoph lastly at the 8X conference at the Duty of Care Pavilion. That's yeah, things like that to promote the ideas that duty of care is something and aid organizations can be liable for it. I do admit to groups like this that it's incredibly difficult to go through a full legal process to a trial in a foreign language against big organizations that have panels of lawyers and many resources. But at least there's a case out there. There's another one in the courts right now that yeah is showing that that liability is there and people have to do better. Also, the extension of duty of care to pre and during and post incident. So in my case, it was also flagged that the support afterwards was lacking, not just the prevention of the incident. And then also another message that I really like to push is the person affected centric support. So sometimes the word victim centric support or survivor centric support, the person who's been affected, that things are centered around them. Often when I'm advocating to an organization, look, this is the case. Here's a timeline. How the hell can you expect somebody to keep advocating for their needs when consistently over this multi-month or multi-year email exchange, they've just been told, we'll see what we can do. Sorry, we got busy with summer vacations, but we're back now. And please submit that thing before Christmas vacations. And sorry, we've delayed it and changed roles. And I'm your new focal point. I'm just going to review the emails and then get back to you. Yeah, that's not really the centric message that we want. And also leaning into people and trusting them. For instance, that person who was asking for psych support and the organization couldn't find that person's relation to the incident that was well documented in media. They're asking for a little bit of psych support, $2,000 worth of psych support. Why don't you just trust the person? That's such a powerful message to your staff. If you're seen as leaning into their support, then I bet your staff will lean into the mission, going further into harm's way and further into the trust that the organization has their back when they're being asked to go into very difficult environments. So yeah, that's kind of my broad perspective of how I got here, the three roles that I try to lay out. And yeah, so let me open it up to questions. Yeah. Christoph, I totally went over the 25 minutes I said.
Don't worry. I think this was very interesting. I really enjoyed listening to you and, with the depth of really digging into your own experience and sharing that with us. I really very much appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let's say we have maybe 10 minutes before we break up, but is there anybody who has got a question for Steve?
Not at this moment.
You sure? Not at this moment. All right.
Sure. I want to say thank you to all of you for holding this webinar. It's really good to meet with Steve, even though it's on the screen, because I was obviously shattered by what happened back in 2012. I get quite emotional even thinking about it, even though I was far away. So I think Steve and the other survivors know that I dug deep into the matter. It might also be because I'm Norwegian. I was mortified that an organization based in Oslo would be violating so many of their own policies and be so carefree about the well-being and the safety of their staff. So I really took it on, and I also enjoy doing it because I was driven to help with the fight for justice. So it's a very good moment for me to be joining. And my question for Steve after your excellent briefing is: are there other people like you? I think that there should be much more resources like this available because the world is large. It's not getting any better from a humanitarian perspective. And I just wondered, what are the resources available? And I'm also hoping that you would not have to do almost 90% pro bono work here. So anyway, so my question is, are there other resources available that you are aware of? Maybe some examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. And yeah, just contextualizing what you said, being involved in the issue, the article that you, or the blog that you put on LinkedIn, definitely is the most thorough I've seen overview of the whole. I would say the case, because the case really brought out the incident, the gaps in and things happening, and also the post incident things. Yeah, others doing this. I think the key reason why I feel quite alone in this is it takes quite a lot of resources. I would say both in terms of time to put to this. So fees, like if it's almost 90% pro bono, that doesn't pay anything. I am working this week on business plans and proposals to donors, because I think it should continue. I want financial sustainability on this, but I guess my model, I'm really looking at not being matching the needs for the world, because yeah, we saw in last year, or the aid worker security report on incidents for serious security incidents for aid workers last year is 444 people seriously injured, kidnapped, or killed aid workers last year. I imagine each of those, well, let's say half of them need somebody like me, a peer that is more than just peer support, but like a very active project manager for their support. Yeah, you need a lot of them. And so I guess that's why the second part of my mandate is advocacy. So people saying that my case changed so much in their organization, and talking outside the organization I sued and worked for, that's great. That's a good effect from that action. So there are other cases that have gone to court, and I'm not afraid to bring other ones forward and to kind of lean into the resource intense and emotional intense and work intense processes to bring cases publicly, should the client want it to go there. Secondly, the workshops and presentations and conferences, I think there is also a way to bring the practical ways forward so that people can do better, and again, trim down the need for this. Yeah, so I don't want to build out my organization or my company to have 20 caseworkers and to do things, but I'd rather teach organizations to do better, and also a subtle nod to managers that are ignoring their security advisors. Why do you have them, and why are you ignoring their advice? Resource them properly and follow their advice more to prevent the incident in the first place. As far as other places that people can go, I have found that there's some flexibility in many people to take on little tasks and to help somebody out for a little thing. So I would say, firstly, to anybody who's suffering from an incident and trauma and they're stuck in this fog, build a team of people around you. Quickly distinguish between who is giving you advice that is just uncalibrated and worthless, and put a strong line between that and people that can help you clear some fog and get one step further ahead. It doesn't have to be me, for sure, but find people on your team, get a good psychotherapist and others, and build that team, and that's what will help you forward. Yeah, there's a lot of good organizations like Thrive Worldwide. They're a psychotherapy group that deals with aid workers and aid organizations. I bet they wouldn't turn somebody away. There's some Trauma Treatment International. They deal with torture victims. They have independent funding where they can take on people with a certain criteria for a certain duration of treatment, but it is pro bono if you fit that criteria. I'm at a maximum caseload right now, just that I can fit in time-wise, and I would say also emotionally wise. I find it difficult if I've got several cases that are on kind of an urgency level. If you imagine, some cases have high urgency of things and low urgency, and the amount of workload might be bigger or smaller. Put it in a 2x2 matrix. There's only so many that I'm comfortable with in the higher intensity, high workload, and high urgency. I've fortunately never had to turn away anybody, but it's been tight. Yeah, I'm reconnecting with my psychologist tomorrow to make sure that I've got good coping mechanisms and a good balance. As I mentioned, I'm working on a business plan. I've got a crowd fund going right now. If anybody likes what I'm doing, put some coins in there. I'm also developing 2 other revenue streams. If somebody has a deeper pocket and wants to take on a case, I'll put a proposal together. This is for a case. Help me out with that one. And then for the deepest of pockets, if you can just erase money from my equation, I can work on the rest. That's the pitch. I'll try to make it fancier than that, but anyways, no, it's difficult. I think there's a lack of people out there because it's there's no money in it. One last thing on that: inside organizations, I do see a role which does have some parallels: the family liaison person or officer person, whatever. Usually this comes out if a person has been detained, captive, and missing for some time, or if somebody has died. Then really somebody who's just given sometimes carte blanche on their ability to support somebody or to support their family. So it could be trivial things like on a detainment, if the salary is going into the spouse's bank account and the family back home can't access it, they need to get a lawyer involved to talk to a bank manager to assist that through somehow. It's not on a checklist, but it's a focus towards what is the need and let's help you out with that. And it's not somebody comparing it to, well, we don't have a policy for that, or it fits outside of our insurance mandate. It's just, no, this makes sense. That's what support looks like. I think there should be roles like this survivor advocate. That's often a role called for this, where it's as kind of flexible and focused on the person's needs, as opposed to what does the checklist of support look like, and the supply management side of it, what's the cheapest price we can do for that. It doesn't allow the fancy things, we're going to pay for the taxi and we're not going to be too bothered by the receipts. that type of thing. So I would like to see more organizations taking on not just a focal point that answers questions, but somebody who really is a peer to sit next to them and say, I've got your best interests at heart. Let's go through my checklist and let's see what else you need here. Yeah. So we're pushing. I'm pushing.
All right, thank you. So look, we have now spent 1 hour after all. Thank you, Steve. I suggest that we conclude the first part of the webinar here. Maybe take 5 minutes to stretch and get something to drink, and then we'll come back for another round of questions.
Sounds good.
So I will stop the recording.
Good. Sounds good. And come back because I've got some other points that people have asked about, and I don't mind bringing those up if you want to hear answers to somebody else's questions.